The Epstein-Iran war connection is way more subtle than it seems, because most of the time, it's not a direct connection at all. It's a storytelling connection. It's an information war connection. It's the way one emotionally radioactive topic gets used to explain, distract from, or weaponize another emotionally radioactive topic. And if you've been online lately, you've seen the pattern. A headline about Iran, a sudden spike in war content, and then, right underneath it, they're doing this to distract from Epstein. Or the other version, Epstein was intelligence, therefore Iran, therefore the war, therefore blackmail, therefore everything is scripted. And the reason this spreads is simple. It offers you a single master key that unlocks every locked door. But real life doesn't use one key. Real life uses messy rings of incentives, timing, politics, and opportunists. So in this breakdown, I'm going to do three things. First, I'm going to tell you what people mean when they say Epstein-Iran war connection, and what parts are actually being reported versus what parts are being assumed. Second, I'm going to show you the three subtle pathways these narratives usually travel: distraction politics, document dump confusion, and intelligence myth magnetism. And third, I'm going to give you a simple framework you can use to keep your brain from getting hijacked every time these two topics get stitched together, and I'll give you the mini payoff early. The strongest connection isn't a secret meeting or a hidden file. The strongest connection is attention. Because when the public is emotionally fixated on Epstein, anything that changes the news cycle becomes suspicious. And when a war dominates the news cycle, anything that resurfaces about Epstein becomes a weapon. That's the loop. Now let's start with the first and most common connection people are talking about right now, the distraction claim. You've probably heard some version of this. They're escalating with Iran to distract from Epstein documents. This isn't coming out of nowhere. In the last few days, there has been public commentary, reported by outlets like The Daily Beast and others, where lawmakers and commentators have suggested that major foreign policy moves can be timed to reshape domestic attention, including attention around Epstein-related document releases. That's not proof of a conspiracy. That's proof that people believe distraction is a political tool. And historically, sometimes it has been. But here's the key subtlety. Believing distraction is possible is not the same as proving a specific war decision was caused by Epstein. The brain wants a single cause. Reality usually has stacks of causes. So if you're trying to be disciplined, here's the first filter. A distraction claim is not a claim about missiles. It's a claim about incentives, meaning the people pushing it are saying, this is politically convenient. Political convenience can exist without being the reason. Sometimes the easiest lie is also the easiest truth. Multiple things can be true at once. A conflict can escalate for strategic reasons, and it can also be useful domestically that it moved the headlines. Now, the second pathway is what I'll call the document dump confusion pathway. In early 2026, there has been a lot of noise about new Epstein files, new Epstein documents, more releases, more pages, and so on. And as more material gets released or recirculated, you're seeing two things happen at the same time. One, serious journalists and researchers are combing through it carefully. Two, the internet is speed running it for dopamine. And here's the subtle way Iran enters this story. Some outlets, like Iran International and some fact-checking or analysis sites, have pointed out that newly surfaced or newly discussed Epstein materials include references to Iran. But the careful versions of those reports also say the key thing that viral accounts leave out. The material is fragmentary, contested, and doesn't prove an operational relationship between Epstein and Iranian officials. That's important, because the internet takes "there are references" and turns it into "there is a relationship." Then it takes "there is a relationship" and turns it into "there is a master plan." And the master plan is always the same shape: intelligence, compromise, blackmail, war, distraction. It's a meme template. So the second subtle connection is that Iran becomes a keyword inside Epstein document discourse, and that keyword becomes gasoline in a war moment. It makes the narrative feel validated, even when the underlying evidence is thin or ambiguous. Now, the third pathway is the most powerful one, and it's the reason these stories never die. I call it intelligence myth magnetism. Epstein's case is already surrounded by unresolved questions, mistrust, and a long history of powerful people being mentioned in proximity to him. That's fertile ground for a specific kind of narrative, the intelligence narrative. And you've seen this explode again recently in mainstream conversation. Time magazine reported that former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett publicly rejected allegations that Epstein worked for Mossad and called those claims slanderous. That doesn't prove Epstein had no intelligence connections whatsoever, but it does show something crucial. The intelligence storyline is now a political and media battlefield, not just a fringe rumor. Why does this matter for the Iran war connection? Because intelligence is the perfect bridge word. If you convince someone Epstein was intelligence, then you can connect him to any geopolitical event on Earth by saying, intelligence agencies operate everywhere. And once you grant that assumption, the rest of the argument becomes unfalsifiable. If someone says, Epstein was intelligence, therefore Iran, therefore the war, there's no endpoint. Every denial becomes proof of cover-up. That's not analysis. That's a closed loop. Now, I'm not saying intelligence services never run operations. I'm not saying compromat never exists. I'm saying the Epstein case has become a magnet that pulls every geopolitical event into the same myth structure. And that's why the connection feels subtle but powerful. It's not about one smoking gun. It's about narrative gravity. Now let's ground this even more. There are 3 versions of the Epstein-Iran war connection that circulate online, and if you can name them, you can stop being surprised by them. Version 1, distraction timing. This one says, a war move happened because someone needed a new headline. It's about domestic politics, attention cycles, and scandal management. Version 2, files contain Iran references. This one says, Epstein documents mention Iran. Therefore, Epstein is linked to Iran. Therefore, the war is linked to Epstein. But again, mention is not proof of relationship, and relationship is not proof of causation. Version 3, Intelligence Master Plan. This one says, Epstein equals blackmail equals intelligence, therefore the war is part of a control system. This one is the most viral because it gives people what they crave, a single story that makes chaos feel controlled. Now, here's the uncomfortable truth. The world is chaotic enough without a puppet master. Wars escalate because of fear, deterrence failure, miscalculation, domestic politics, alliance dynamics, and hard constraints like energy and logistics. Scandals persist because institutions are slow, incentives are messy, and information is fragmented. You don't need one secret thread tying it all together for it to be ugly. But here's where it gets even more subtle. These narratives can still matter even if they're not true in the literal sense. Because narratives shape behavior. A big part of modern conflict is public consent, political pressure, and perception management. So, if a large segment of people believe this war is a distraction from Epstein, that belief becomes politically relevant even if the causal claim is wrong. It affects trust. It affects legitimacy. It affects what people interpret as real. And in a high-stress environment, loss of trust is its own kind of weapon. Now, let me give you one concrete example of how this gets weaponized without turning it into a conspiracy itself. When a war headline hits, you'll see content that says, "Don't look at the war, look at Epstein." Then, when Epstein headlines hit, you'll see content that says, "Don't look at Epstein, look at the war." This creates a permanent suspicion engine. Whatever is in front of you is assumed to be cover for whatever is behind you. That's a psychological loop. And the loop is profitable because it keeps you scrolling, sharing, and staying emotionally activated. Now here's the part that most people miss. The Epstein-Iran war connection can be subtle because it happens through platforms, not through policy. Meaning, the connection is often created by creators, influencers, partisan media, and engagement algorithms. It's not always created by governments. Sometimes it's just the logic of the internet. Attach the hottest scandal to the hottest war, and you get maximum attention. And if you want a modern proof of that dynamic, even academic work is now studying how attention to Epstein in certain media ecosystems correlates with changes in political messaging behavior over short windows. There was a recent paper circulated on Archive analyzing how spikes in Epstein coverage relate to novelty and timing in political communication. Again, that doesn't prove war decisions are caused by scandal. It proves attention is measurable and politically meaningful. Now, with all that said, let's do the most important part, the framework. Because if you don't have a framework, your brain will accept whichever story feels most satisfying today. Here's the framework I want you to use anytime you see Epstein plus Iran war stitched together. 3 buckets: confirmed, plausible, packaged. Confirmed means verified reporting, multiple credible sources, official statements, documents with clear provenance. Plausible means it could be true, but evidence is incomplete, claims are indirect, or the connection is interpretive rather than factual. Packaged means the narrative is designed to produce a feeling, certainty, outrage, fear, or superiority without meeting the evidence standard. So when someone says they bombed Iran to distract from Epstein, put it in the plausible bucket at best, unless they can show direct evidence of intent. When someone says Epstein files mention Iran, put it in the confirmed bucket only if the documents are real and the reference is accurately described, but keep the meaning in the plausible bucket until it's corroborated. When someone says, this proves the whole war is a blackmail operation, put it in the package bucket unless they can produce verifiable, non-circular evidence. Now, I'm going to say one sentence that will save you from the most common trap. A connection can be politically useful without being the cause. That's the subtlety. People can exploit overlap, timing, and attention without having created the event. Now, the question you should be asking isn't, is there a connection? The question you should be asking is, what kind of connection? Is it a factual connection? Documents, money, meetings, operations? Is it a political connection? Timing, incentives, attention management? Is it an algorithmic connection? Creators stitching narratives for engagement. Most of what you're seeing is the last two, not the first, and that's why it feels subtle. It's not one smoking gun, it's a feedback loop. Now, I'm going to end with the most important takeaway. If you care about truth, don't let the most emotionally satisfying narrative become your identity, because once it becomes identity, evidence stops mattering, and in an information war era, the easiest way to control people is not to hide facts. It's to give them a story they love repeating. So here's my question for you. When you see Epstein and a war headline stitched together, what do you think is driving it more? Genuine investigative links or algorithmic storytelling and distraction politics? Drop your take.